Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is a screencast-matic tutorial presentation that's meant to help you out with your project for There Ought to Be a Law for the legislative branch. Before we get started, please let me encourage you just to watch, listen, and take in to some of the recommendations and feedback that I'm going to give you off of this model presentation that coincides with further directions and clarity for the project right now. Please remember that when you're finished, you may resume and or start working on your project and submit accordingly. Let's go ahead and get started. So basically, the first thing that you need to do before I even show you my sample presentation is you have to sign up for an idea on Google Classroom. This can be done on the project post under Unit 7 Lessons Assignments on the Classwork tab. Once you see the actual tab with its many addendums, please open up the sign-up sheet right here. When you open up the sign-up sheet, you will see this infographic right here and a list of just a few of the ideas that you might be willing and able to champion. Keep in mind you are not confined to these ideas. Once you have picked an idea, you may sign up accordingly on the spreadsheet below by putting your idea, as well as, of course, any further details that you feel might be helpful for the teacher to see. Please then, of course, wait until you see my approved stamp with my initials and the date approved. You need that before you proceed. Once you have that, you may then, of course, go ahead to proceed with your presentation. You may do that by then, of course, opening up the packet, which is right here. And the packet essentially looks like this, where you have the cover sheet, and some directions that are going to be conveyed to you right now. Essentially, your job here is to make a bill or a law that could be passed in our society today. What your main job is to answer these questions with detail, and I am going to be looking for detail when I grade your work for all these questions here. Essentially, the packet is broken up into 3 sections. So make sure that you provide ample amounts of time for each of these types of questions. Please remember that the second part of this project entails you opening up this doc right here and making a flyer. Your flyer, of course, may run the gamut of several different types of formats and fundamentals, which I'll share with you later. But right now, I'd like to share with you a sample presentation, which essentially answers all the questions on the packet, and additionally, of course, showcasing my flyer. So let me go ahead and get started and share with you my part of the presentation right now. This is the Youth Voice, Youth Vote Act. There ought to be a law. So essentially, the problem that I spotted here in our society is that voter turnout is at an all-time low. Many adult Americans have a very careless approach to voting, politics, and elections in general. In fact, in the last election, only 58% of eligible voters did vote. So, with that being said, the purpose of my proposal is to expand the American electorate by allowing more educated persons to vote. The youth of our nation at age 16 have a sense of the real world and have taken on more responsibilities and roles as young adults than in generations past. I find this to make them qualified to vote. So essentially, in answering the questions for Section 1, the name of my bill or law is the Youth Voice, Youth Vote Act, and I, of course, would change this accordingly. Now, additionally, what exactly is in this proposal, and what is my intention? To expand the American electorate by changing the voting age, the voting process, and prioritizing a shift in our refocus for voting. More American citizens should get involved with the process at large to bring true change. That's why I'm fighting for this bill or this law. Now, additionally here, this bill is going to start in the House, and the reason is because mostly I can see Democrats favoring this bill because they tend to favor younger generations and their priorities and needs. They would be able to warm up to the idea a lot sooner and quicker than the Senate, which is substantially older at this time. Hence, why I think this would start and fare better in the House. Now, additionally, let me go ahead and explain some of the other questions here. This issue matters to me personally, and the reason why I'm fighting for this is because as a civics and government teacher, I would like to see more youth involvement in our democracy. I think one of the best ways to push for that is for more active participation in our elections. This will help students see the real value in some of the content that is focused on in school, and also it would allow younger generations to have refreshing viewpoints brought to the table and considered on contemporary issues with potential solutions. Now, another thing here to consider with this question, do I actually think that this bill would pass in Congress today? Believe it or not, I said yes, because Congress has changed and altered the age restrictions and procedures for voting before in the past, and to me this would be the same thing. Additionally, more people are demanding changes to some of our most influential barriers, and this would be a great step in the right direction. Now, in terms of Section 2, what 3 things does our bill consist of specifically, and are there any provisions or measures that would be needed to be considered? Well, all states will adopt this proposal as it is federal law. High schools will have voter registration personnel come in to help register high school students and voters, if they're of age, at least 2 months before Election Day. And once again, this will be a federal legal requirement. Also, buses and transportation will be provided on Election Day from all schools, public, private, and parochial, to provide transportation to any pupils who do not have it. And of course, this transportation would take them right after school to the nearby voting polling place. I would also encourage direct representatives to be required to attend public schools more frequently that are within their specific districts to explain the benefits of voting and or making one's voice heard. I would also suggest that if direct representatives can't make it, they would be required to have congressional staffers to go on their behalf and present something to the school at large to talk to them about the specifics and importance of voting. Also part of Section 2. In regards to the 2 reasons as to why people's lives will be better from this, with the voting electorate expanded, we the people have a chance to change government to be more representative and conducive to the needs of the people. By expanding the electorate, we can do just that. Additionally, with schools getting more involved, more districts will have a chance to refocus their funding and curriculum to real-world issues like voting and adult living. I can see, as far as committees, the House Government Reform Committee leading the charge on this bill, and of course figuring out the specifics of this bill, because government reform involves changing rules, laws, procedures, and regulations to carry the ball forward, so to speak. And that's why I think this would be a great idea. Now, everyone's a critic. What might naysayers say about this? Some people might say that 16-year-olds do not have the maturity to vote. However, as a teacher, I can say that they are wrong because most high school students have more life experience than previous generations at their age. With being a high school student, being involved in extracurricular activities, having more responsibilities, and greater connection to the world today with social media. Civics and government classes also help them have a general understanding of the democratic processes as they work, so they are equipped with the knowledge. Also, some people might say that it's not the school's responsibility to make sure that voting is a priority. However, I would suggest that schools are products of the community. The community supports schools. And schools, by the way, can really change our national, state, and local policies that would benefit them at large if more young people did vote. Now, in regards to the last section here, how exactly will this be enforced? I plan to put forth a proposal to have regulatory boards at the federal level and also at the state level to oversee that these types of procedures are being implemented, as far as ease and access to voting polling locations, and also as far as the outreach from representatives to schools themselves. Also, school districts are required to lay forth a detailed report of their setup and their implementation procedures and plans for this type of protocol to be implemented. As far as how do I plan and fund to pay for this provision, well, federal government and states will provide the funding for the busing and the registration personnel to be provided for each school districts. This is, of course, really important to do. Also, grants from the Get Out the Vote organization and campaign from around the country will be collected, and all will be encouraged to donate too. Also, national and local charity organizations and school clubs should help to donate money to alleviate the costs as well. Additionally, the punishment for people, groups, or schools not sponsoring this bill would be that, of course, they would face a fine that would go up or down depending on the infraction occurred, and depending on, of course, the obstacle that they impose on the said entity in pursuing this type of endeavor. Congressional investigations would be launched, and potential court hearings would be implemented too for any people who were guilty. So as you guys can see, those are some of the things that I would consider with advocating for this law. Very quickly, here's my flyer that I put together to share with you. The flyer is called the Youth Voice, Youth Vote Act, and it essentially highlights some of the things that I'm trying to advocate for, younger people voting, but additionally laying out the specifics of my agenda and explaining the rationale as to why. These catchphrases down here at the bottom also illustrate attention to this serious issue, and I think it might of course help as far as a means of propaganda that would further persuade other people to propose and support this type of proposition. So there you guys have it. That is my sample project that I have composed here to help you understand a little bit more about where I'm coming from. Hopefully you found this to be incredibly helpful and beneficial. Please remember that if you have any questions, feel free to contact me from now until the deadline. Thank you so much for tuning in, and good luck with completing the project.